Matthew Perry had it all. Fame, fortune, and millions of fans, yet he felt empty inside. His life wasn't just about sitcom stardom. It was also about battles behind the scenes, moments close to death, and a search for true meaning beyond Hollywood's bright lights. His tragic death serves as a powerful warning, and the lessons he left behind are ones we should all learn. Discover how he turned pain into a legacy of hope that will endure far beyond his career. Remember to comment in support. Write change, and maybe thanks to you, someone will be able to redefine their life today. Let's get started. Lesson 1. Openness is courage that inspires. Matthew Perry's journey is an extraordinary testament to the courage it takes to be vulnerable. Amid the glamour of Hollywood, Perry demonstrated that true bravery is about confronting one's darkest struggles and sharing them with the world. At the height of his fame, while portraying Chandler Bing on Friends, Perry was battling an addiction to alcohol and painkillers. "I was on Friends while being a 55 Vicodin-a-day addict," Perry openly confessed in an interview. The reality was that, even as people laughed at his jokes on screen, he was fighting a silent battle that was destroying him from within. Perry was candid about how he felt during his Friends years, explaining, "I don't remember 3 years of it. Somewhere between seasons 3 and 6. It's hard to imagine that a period when Perry was creating some of the funniest television moments of all time was a time he couldn't even remember due to addiction." His decision to talk openly about his addiction shattered the illusion that fame or success could somehow shield a person from pain. It was a reminder that being honest about our struggles can help us begin to heal and help others along the way. His honesty was a beacon for many who looked up to him, showing them that it was okay to struggle and that admitting it was the first step toward recovery. Perry's openness is a powerful lesson for all of us. Sharing our struggles not only unburdens our hearts, but also helps others feel less alone. One of the key moments in Perry's journey came when his body could no longer endure the abuse. In 2018, his colon burst due to opioid overuse, a catastrophic event that nearly took his life. "The doctors gave me a 2% chance to live," he shared. This terrifying experience forced Perry to face the reality of his addiction. He spent 5 months in recovery, enduring unimaginable physical pain and struggling to learn how to walk again. Perry's resilience during this period serves as a powerful lesson that recovery is not linear, but it is possible. Courage isn't about avoiding falling. It's about finding the strength to stand back up each time. For viewers, this is a reminder that no matter how grim things may look, survival and recovery are always possible. Humor was Perry's lifeline, and he often used it to make sense of his darkest experiences. After his surgery, he had to wear a colostomy bag, a humiliating reality for many. But Perry used it as an opportunity to laugh. He would joke about his Batman belt and make light of his situation. He said, "I got pretty good at hiding the bag under my shirt and making jokes about it. After all, laughing was the only way to keep from crying." Humor became his way of coping with the unimaginable, transforming a potentially isolating experience into something others could relate to. This coping mechanism teaches us all the importance of laughter. Even in our darkest times, humor can be a lifeline, a way to shift perspective and hold on to hope. It's a tool that allows us to find strength where none seems available. Perry's ability to be vulnerable and share his struggles wasn't limited to his fans. It also transformed his relationship with his co-stars on Friends. Lisa Kudrow, who played Phoebe Buffay, once shared, "It was hard not knowing what he was going through, and yet he was always making us laugh." The Friends cast was close, but Perry initially kept his struggles hidden from them. He later acknowledged that he wished he had been more open from the beginning. When Perry finally began sharing his journey with those closest to him, it was a profound turning point. By allowing them to support him, Perry showed that opening up is an act of bravery, not weakness. For all of us, his story illustrates how honesty can foster deeper relationships, allowing those around us to provide the love and support we need. His journey to openness didn't end with those in his inner circle. Perry made a conscious effort to help complete strangers who were struggling. Perry often spoke about his interactions with fans who approached him during public events or even in passing, telling him their stories of addiction. "I was always willing to give people my number. I wanted them to know they had someone they could talk to," Perry shared. His willingness to be available and open to others created a support network that extended far beyond Hollywood. For viewers, Perry's actions are a lesson in empathy. By being willing to share and connect, we create a network of support that strengthens everyone involved. Sometimes, the best way to make sense of our struggles is by helping others make sense of theirs. In one memorable instance, Perry went beyond private conversations and took his story to a broader platform. He appeared at a congressional hearing to advocate for better addiction treatment options, using his fame not for personal gain but for the benefit of others struggling with substance abuse. "Addiction is not a moral failing," he told the panel. "It is a disease, and it requires treatment and understanding." His testimony resonated deeply, as it wasn't just the words of a celebrity. It was a plea from someone who had experienced addiction firsthand. Perry's efforts to change the narrative around addiction were a testament to his growth and the courage it took to turn his struggle into action for change. By speaking out on such platforms, Perry demonstrated that our pain can become a tool for creating meaningful change, not just for ourselves, but for countless others. One of Perry's most impactful acts of transforming pain into purpose came with the creation of Perry House. He transformed his Malibu home into a sober living facility for those in recovery, a place that he described as a house of hope. By opening his doors to those seeking help, Perry not only created a safe space for others, but also found deeper fulfillment himself. He often shared that seeing people recover at Perry House brought him more joy than any acting accolade ever could. "When someone says, 'You helped me get sober,' that's better than an Oscar to me," Perry confessed. This transformation of his personal space, a place that once bore witness to his struggles, into a sanctuary for healing, was a profound act of giving back. It's a lesson for all of us. Our struggles, once faced, can become a tool for transformation and healing for others. Despite being known as Chandler Bing, a character famous for his jokes and carefree attitude, Matthew Perry was far from the sitcom fantasy. Off-screen, he faced the heavy burden of addiction and self-doubt. Yet, Perry chose to use his platform to lift others. He often said, "I want to be remembered for helping people. The only thing I take more pride in than friends is that I have used my experience to make people's lives better." His honesty about his pain and his decision to use it as a force for good showed that real courage lies in vulnerability. Sharing our darkest struggles can become our brightest beacon for others. Matthew Perry's story serves as an inspiring reminder that even in the face of adversity, one can find strength, humor, and purpose. His courage to be open about addiction, his use of humor to navigate pain, and his dedication to helping others transformed him from just a beloved TV character into a true advocate for change. By embracing his vulnerability, Perry left behind a legacy that is far more impactful than any television role, a legacy of resilience, openness, and compassion. His journey teaches us that being open about our struggles is not a sign of weakness, but a profound act of strength that has the power to inspire and save others. Matthew Perry showed that openness can inspire. You too can find strength by sharing your struggles, but imagine achieving everything you ever dreamed of: success, fame, wealth, and still feeling that same inner emptiness. This painful truth was the next challenge for Perry. How do you cope with the feeling that even the fulfillment of your biggest dreams doesn't bring the peace you hoped for? Can true solace ever be found when life seems full, but the heart feels empty? Lesson 2. Success does not protect against suffering. Matthew Perry's journey reveals an important truth. Success, fame, and wealth do not automatically shield someone from suffering. During the peak of Friends, Perry was earning over $1 million per episode, making him one of the highest-paid TV actors in history. The sitcom had become a cultural phenomenon, with fans across the globe adoring Perry's portrayal of Chandler Bing, the witty, sarcastic friend who always had a joke ready. And yet, the financial success and public adoration did not bring Perry the sense of fulfillment he expected. You could be rich and famous and have everything you ever wanted, but without peace of mind, it's just meaningless, Perry said in an interview, reflecting on the hollowness he felt despite his overwhelming success. Perry described how the $1 million salary didn't come with a magical sense of happiness or inner peace. Instead, it magnified the emptiness he felt. The pressure to be the funny guy on screen was echoed by the expectation to be just as amusing off-screen. This expectation became exhausting over time. Perry was always on stage, always performing, even when the cameras weren't rolling. In public, he was constantly put on a pedestal, and the public image he felt pressured to maintain was in direct opposition to the pain and loneliness he experienced behind the scenes. The pressures of stardom also affected Perry's relationships. In what seemed like a Hollywood fairy tale, Perry began dating Julia Roberts during the height of Friends. It was the kind of relationship most people would envy, being romantically involved with one of the biggest movie stars of the decade. The two met when Roberts was invited to guest star on an episode of Friends. However, Perry later admitted that despite being with one of Hollywood's biggest stars, he couldn't shake the feeling of unworthiness. He feared that Roberts would eventually realize that he wasn't good enough for her. This insecurity led him to abruptly end the relationship, despite deeply caring for her. Perry explained, "I was terrified that she would break up with me. So instead, I ended it. That was my fear of not being enough, always feeling like a fraud." For viewers, this part of Perry's story serves as a stark reminder that even love and romance, when met with inner turmoil and fear of inadequacy, can turn into yet another source of anxiety. Another vivid example of Perry's internal struggle amidst public triumph is the iconic fountain scene in the Friends intro. For most fans, this scene symbolizes the carefree joy of friendship, filled with laughter and excitement. But for Perry, the memory of filming it is bittersweet. He remembers putting on a smile for the cameras while privately consumed by the need to keep his addiction hidden. During these celebratory moments, his mind wasn't on enjoying success with his co-stars. It was focused on whether he could get through the scene without his condition being noticed. He often found himself thinking about how he could access more pills or alcohol after work. It wasn't a life lived freely. It was a life in a cage, built out of fear of exposure. At the same time, Perry's relationship with material success became increasingly strained. He bought his dream house in Los Angeles, perched high on the hills, overlooking the city that had made him a star. It was an architectural wonder, complete with a swimming pool, sweeping views, and every imaginable luxury. Perry recalled sitting in his beautiful living room, looking at the stunning cityscape below, and realizing he felt just as lonely there as he did anywhere else. "The problem with buying your dream house is that you're still yourself when you walk through the front door," Perry said, highlighting how external success failed to change his internal state. This house, instead of becoming a symbol of fulfillment, became a reminder of his solitude. It showed that despite achieving his biggest material dreams, happiness remained out of reach. Perry's status as a successful actor also came with countless awards and accolades. He was nominated for several Primetime Emmy Awards for his role in Friends, and he received widespread acclaim for his ability to blend comedy with genuine emotion. However, even standing on stage, holding trophies, and receiving applause from the entertainment industry, Perry still felt something was missing. Standing there, holding an award, all I could think of was how none of this was making me feel whole, he later admitted. While to the outside world, he had everything: fame, recognition, wealth. He struggled with a void that no external validation could fill. For anyone watching, This is a stark lesson that success, no matter how grand, cannot always compensate for the emotional or psychological gaps that one carries. Perry's professional obligations also added to the pressure. When he wasn't on the set of Friends, he was busy with other projects, movies, interviews, public appearances. The relentless demands of Hollywood didn't allow for the time and space he needed to face his addiction properly. He felt like he was on a never-ending treadmill, and the faster he ran, the further away he got from what he truly needed: help. At one point, Perry recalls being in London for the premiere of The Whole 9 Yards, a movie in which he co-starred with Bruce Willis. The red carpet was bustling, filled with photographers and fans calling his name. But instead of feeling the excitement of success, Perry was consumed with a sense of fear. Fear that someone would notice the signs of his addiction. Fear that even with all of this, he was not worthy of the love and admiration being directed his way. Behind all these public successes lay a different story. A story of a man who, despite achieving all the things that the world measures as success, felt lost. The more successful Perry became, the more disconnected he felt from himself. He described these moments of triumph as fleeting, like fireworks that lit up the night sky but disappeared almost as quickly. After the applause ended and the crowds dispersed, Perry was left in silence, facing the reality that the emptiness he felt couldn't be filled by money, houses, or fame. This aspect of his journey serves as an important reflection for us all. True fulfillment doesn't come from external achievements, but from finding peace within. The story of Matthew Perry is not just about his addiction. It is also about the illusion of success. He had everything that our society tells us we need to be happy: money, fame, power, recognition, relationships, but none of it brought him the peace that he craved. Perry's willingness to share this truth openly challenges us to reconsider our own pursuit of success. We often think that if we only achieve our next goal, earn a little more money, or gain more recognition, we will finally feel fulfilled. Perry's story teaches us otherwise. It suggests that fulfillment is less about what we have and more about how we understand and care for ourselves. Perry's experience also highlights the importance of being honest with oneself. Despite the financial rewards and accolades, he still felt empty. But it took years for him to admit that to himself. Instead, he buried those feelings beneath layers of substance abuse and outward performance. This delay in acknowledging his pain only deepened his suffering. For the audience, there is a crucial lesson here. No amount of success can substitute for genuine self-awareness. Acknowledging pain and seeking help are acts of courage that allow us to move towards real healing, even when the world expects us to be something different. Another important takeaway from Perry's story is the danger of relying on external validation. Perry frequently spoke about how he was always chasing the next milestone, hoping it would bring him happiness. Whether it was buying a new car, achieving a higher paycheck, or dating a celebrity, there was always something he believed would finally make him feel worthy. But each time he reached a new milestone, he found that the sense of fulfillment he expected remained elusive. Perry's insight on this is invaluable. I kept thinking, when I get this, I'll feel okay. But every time I got it, I realized that I still felt the same. This teaches us that true worth must come from within. Looking for it outside ourselves is a never-ending chase. Ultimately, Matthew Perry's story reveals a paradox of success, that even having everything doesn't mean having inner peace. The story he shared with the world is not a cautionary tale about the dangers of fame, but rather an honest exploration of how the things we often value most, success, wealth, fame, are not necessarily the things that bring us happiness. Perry's vulnerability in sharing his story teaches us that success, as defined by society, isn't the answer to life's deepest challenges. True fulfillment is about the relationships we nurture, the honesty we live with, and the courage we have to face our fears, not just about achieving external milestones. Lesson 3: Childhood trauma shapes a lifetime. Matthew Perry's story is one shaped significantly by his early life, and his childhood traumas had a profound impact on who he would become. His struggles began almost from the moment he was born. Perry's parents divorced when he was only 9 months old, a separation that would leave a permanent mark on him. His father, John Bennett Perry, was an aspiring actor who moved to Los Angeles to pursue his career, while his mother, Suzanne Morrison, remained in Canada. The separation meant that Perry was handed over from one parent to the other at the Canada-US border, an event that, while he could not remember consciously, planted an early seed of abandonment in his psyche. Even in adulthood, Perry often reflected on this moment as a powerful symbol of being passed around, which would later contribute to his ongoing feelings of not being enough or not belonging. His mother's career also meant that Perry often felt second to the demands of her work. Suzanne worked as a press secretary for Pierre Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, which brought her a lot of responsibilities and meant long hours away from home. For young Matthew, this translated into a sense of being left behind, of not being able to get the attention he needed. Perry described trying to win his mother's attention, feeling that no matter what he did, she was always preoccupied. "I would try to be funny, I would try to be good, anything to make her notice me," he later said. This early desire to entertain, to become the center of attention even for a fleeting moment, laid the foundation for his comedic abilities. But it was also fueled by a need that remained unfulfilled throughout his childhood. Adding to the turmoil, Perry's father moved to Los Angeles to pursue an acting career, leading to a fragmented sense of family life. Perry often had to fly alone between his parents, a journey he remembers vividly. "I was this little kid wearing a badge that said unaccompanied minor. I felt like a piece of luggage being shipped back and forth," he once recounted. These flights became symbolic of his loneliness, literal journeys that reflected his emotional state. Each journey represented a transition between two different worlds: his father's glamorous, though often distant, Hollywood life, and his mother's high-pressure political environment. Perry often described these transitions as deeply unsettling, contributing to his feeling of not truly belonging anywhere. He never felt fully settled, which later in life translated into a deep-rooted restlessness. One of the early defining incidents of trauma for Perry was an accident when he was only 3 years old. He lost part of his middle finger in a door accident. His mother rushed him to the hospital, and although Perry was in significant pain, he recalls trying to comfort his mother instead of expressing his own distress. "I remember thinking, even at 3 years old, that I couldn't cry because my mom was so scared," Perry shared in an interview. This early need to suppress his emotions in order to protect his mother created a lasting impact. Throughout his life, Perry continued to feel the need to shield others from his pain, bottling up his struggles until they became overwhelming. The sense of responsibility for other people's emotional states, even when he was the one in need, became a recurring theme in his relationships. Perry also found himself in a complex relationship with his mother's partners. Suzanne's demanding job meant she was often dating or marrying men who played a role in Perry's life, if only temporarily. Perry often spoke about his yearning for a father figure, someone who would be a stable presence in his life. He would try to bond with his mother's partners, seeking the fatherly attention he desperately missed, only for these relationships to be cut short when those men left. This cycle of bonding and losing deeply impacted Perry, reinforcing his fears of abandonment and contributing to his lifelong quest for stability. In later years, Perry would describe how these experiences made it difficult for him to trust people fully or believe that anyone would stick around. "Every time I started to get close, they'd be gone. I got used to people leaving," he said, explaining the root of his difficulties in forming lasting relationships. Perry's relationship with his mother, while loving, was often fraught with challenges. Suzanne, being an ambitious career woman, had her own struggles and pressures, and while she cared deeply for Matthew, her ability to be present was limited. Perry often felt that he had to be the good kid so as not to burden her further. "I didn't want to be the problem. I wanted to be the kid who didn't need anything," he said. This dynamic created a sense of emotional self-sufficiency that Perry carried into adulthood. He learned not to ask for help, not to show weakness, and to keep his struggles to himself. It wasn't until much later in life, after reaching rock bottom, that he learned the importance of vulnerability and asking for support. School life was also a challenging time for young Perry. After moving to Ottawa with his mother, Perry attended Rockcliffe Park Public School, where he struggled academically. Feeling inadequate in his studies, he found that humor was a way to gain acceptance among his peers. "I learned very early that if you're the funny guy, people won't notice that you're struggling," Perry once reflected. This approach worked well socially, and Perry became the class clown, a role that would later become a defining aspect of his career. Yet, underneath the jokes, Perry was struggling with undiagnosed attention deficit issues, making it difficult for him to concentrate or keep up with schoolwork. The reinforcement he received for being funny masked his learning difficulties and set a precedent for using humor as a defense mechanism. Another major factor that influenced Perry's emotional state was his father's absence. John Bennett Perry, a charismatic and handsome actor, was often on sets or engaged in other professional pursuits, leaving young Matthew feeling disconnected from his father's world. The elder Perry appeared in commercials and had bit parts in movies and TV shows, ironically, later even appearing in an episode of Friends with his son. But during Matthew's formative years, his father's absence was deeply felt. Perry would later describe how he often felt that his father's pursuit of success took priority over their relationship. This feeling of being secondary, first to his mother's career and later to his father's ambitions, left a scar that Perry would carry into his adult relationships, always fearing he wasn't enough. One lesser-known fact about Perry's childhood is his early interest in tennis. He showed great talent for the sport, even ranking as one of Canada's top junior players during his teenage years. Tennis became an outlet for Perry, a place where he could channel his frustrations and insecurities into something productive. The sport provided a temporary escape from the complexities of his family dynamics. However, the competitiveness of tennis also came with pressure, and when Perry eventually moved to Los Angeles to live with his father, he found the shift challenging. Competing against the best in California proved to be much tougher, and the failures he experienced on the court further fed into his feelings of inadequacy. "I was good, but I wasn't the best, and that really affected me," Perry recalled. The inability to reach his full potential in tennis was another blow to his already fragile self-esteem. Perry's childhood experiences of loneliness, displacement, and the search for a stable father figure were instrumental in shaping the man he would become. These early traumas contributed to his addictive tendencies, seeking solace in substances that he couldn't find in people. His need to be loved, coupled with his deep fear of abandonment, made his relationships difficult. He often sought approval through humor, a coping mechanism that worked well for building a career, but left him vulnerable when it came to genuine emotional connections. Even in his career-defining role as Chandler Bing, Perry's portrayal was heavily influenced by his childhood. Chandler, like Perry, often used humor as a shield to mask insecurities. The sarcastic, self-deprecating humor that defined Chandler was a reflection of Perry's own experiences growing up, of trying to fit in, of wanting to be loved, and of hiding vulnerability behind a witty retort. In a way, playing Chandler allowed Perry to channel his own pain into something creative, something that resonated with millions of viewers who could see a bit of themselves in Chandler's awkwardness and self-doubt. The story of Matthew Perry's childhood is not just a backstory. It's the foundation upon which all his later struggles were built. The loneliness he felt being shuttled between parents, the yearning for stability that never came, the pressure to always be the good kid. These experiences didn't disappear when Perry became a successful actor. Instead, they lingered in the background, shaping his decisions, his relationships, and his struggles with addiction. Perry's story reminds us that childhood experiences, especially those that are painful or unresolved, have a lasting impact. They shape our view of ourselves and the world, influencing how we navigate relationships and challenges later in life. Lesson 4. Health is the greatest treasure. Matthew Perry's journey makes one thing abundantly clear. All the fame, fortune, and success in the world cannot buy health. Perry's life is marked by dramatic health challenges that tested his physical limits and fundamentally shaped his perspective. The most harrowing of these was the colon explosion in 2018, which nearly ended his life. Perry's addiction to opioids had taken a severe toll on his body, weakening his digestive system to the point that his colon burst. He described the moment as an unimaginable pain, unlike anything I had ever felt, comparing it to an animal clawing through his insides. This incident was not just a health scare. It was a near-death experience that left Perry fighting for his life with a mere 2% chance of survival. It was a shocking wake-up call, even for someone accustomed to the extremes of addiction. The aftermath of the surgery was grueling. Perry spent 2 weeks in a coma, and when he woke up, he had to deal with the reality of a long and painful recovery. He was fitted with a colostomy bag, a device that drained his bodily waste into an external pouch. The experience was humiliating and eye-opening, serving as a constant reminder of how fragile the human body can become. Perry spent 5 months in the hospital recovering, which included learning how to walk again after weeks of muscle atrophy. "I had to rebuild myself from the ground up," Perry recounted, reflecting on how even the most basic actions, sitting up, standing, moving his legs, had to be relearned. For someone who once moved effortlessly on the Friends set, this period was both a humbling and deeply transformative experience. Perry's struggle with health was not limited to the physical pain of his colon explosion. He also battled chronic insomnia for years, a condition that often exacerbated his other health issues. Insomnia took a heavy toll on his mental and physical well-being. He described nights where he lay awake for hours, his mind racing with worries, regrets, and thoughts that spiraled out of control. Perry often used substances to combat his inability to sleep, which created a vicious cycle. The more he took to sleep, the worse his dependency became. He described his sleepless nights as some of the darkest periods in his life. "When you're awake alone at 3 a.m., the world feels like it's closing in on you," he said. Insomnia, more than anything, highlighted how even small, everyday challenges could turn into monumental struggles without the comfort of sleep. Even after Perry's health began to stabilize, the physical aftermath of his surgery was something he carried with him for a long time. Learning to live with a colostomy bag became one of the most humbling aspects of his recovery. The colostomy bag wasn't just a physical burden. It was an emotional challenge, a reminder of the fragility of his health. Perry used humor to make light of the situation, even joking about the Batman belt holding his colostomy bag in place. Humor had always been his defense mechanism, a way to cope with the unimaginable. But beneath the jokes, Perry spoke of how deeply humbling it was to need help for even the most basic tasks. "Having someone else take care of you when you can't even move yourself is something that makes you realize how vulnerable we all are," he said, pointing to the fact that no amount of wealth or fame could shield him from the realities of his body's frailty. In addition to dealing with the direct consequences of his addiction, Perry also struggled with an ongoing dependency on painkillers, even after he started his recovery. He openly discussed how difficult it was to stop taking Dilaudid, which he described as his favorite drug. The challenge wasn't just about breaking a habit, it was about letting go of a crutch that had become the answer to every painful question his body asked. Every surgery, every injury, every sleepless night presented an opportunity for his addiction to resurface. Perry was honest about how the cycle of addiction felt almost impossible to break. "It was as though my brain had decided that I couldn't function without these pills," he admitted. The need for painkillers wasn't just a physical dependency. It was deeply psychological, tied to the desire to numb the pain that had plagued him for years. Perry's health battles extended into multiple stints in rehabilitation centers. He went through rehabilitation 15 times, each experience presenting new challenges. While the media often reported these stints as failures, proof of Perry's inability to stay clean, he saw them differently. Rehab wasn't a failure. Every time I went, I learned something new about myself. It was about survival, Perry explained. For him, each attempt at rehabilitation was another chance to understand the underlying reasons for his addiction, another chance to come to terms with the pain he had tried so hard to ignore. The repeated trips to rehab also helped Perry realize that recovery wasn't linear. There were setbacks, moments of progress, and then steps backward again. His story is a reminder that the path to recovery is rarely straightforward. It requires resilience, patience, and the courage to keep trying, even after falling. Throughout his many health challenges, Perry's sense of humor remained a defining aspect of his coping strategy. He used humor as a way to both deflect and deal with the painful realities of his condition. This was evident not only in interviews, but also in his interactions with friends and fans. Perry often joked about his health, making light of his situation even when it was dire. In one instance, while still recovering in the hospital, Perry made a quip about how he had beaten the odds, saying, "Doctors gave me a 2% chance of surviving, but I always did like proving people wrong." These moments of levity helped Perry not only endure, but also communicate his struggles in a way that was relatable, using laughter to bridge the gap between the harsh reality of his health and the world around him. Perry's health issues also pushed him to take on a different role, one of an advocate for others dealing with similar struggles. He used his fame to raise awareness about the challenges of addiction and the importance of health, speaking openly at various public events and addiction conferences. Perry realized that by sharing the reality of his health struggles, he could help others see that addiction was a health issue, not a moral failing. He participated in congressional hearings where he shared his personal experiences to advocate for better access to treatment and more compassionate responses to addiction. People think addiction is a choice, but they don't realize that for many of us, it's a fight for our lives, Perry stated during one hearing, challenging the stigma that often surrounds addiction. Beyond public advocacy, Perry found personal ways to help others. He converted his Malibu house into a sober living facility named Perry House, providing a safe space for those trying to recover from addiction. The house was meant to be a place of hope, a place where people could come to heal without the pressures of the outside world. For Perry, creating Perry House was a deeply personal mission. He understood the importance of having a space where people felt supported and understood because he himself had struggled to find that kind of environment during his journey to sobriety. "This is the most meaningful thing I've ever done," Perry once said, reflecting on how Perry House gave him a greater sense of purpose than acting ever did. Matthew Perry's story is ultimately one of resilience, of facing the frailty of his body, acknowledging the limits of what he could control, and finding a way to live in the midst of it all. His health battles, while terrifying, became opportunities for growth and transformation. They taught him, and by extension, anyone listening to his story, that health is not something to be taken for granted. It is a treasure that, once lost, changes everything about how a person lives. Perry's journey through surgeries, rehabilitation, and the constant battle against his addictions is a powerful reminder of the importance of taking care of oneself, both physically and mentally. For viewers, Perry's health struggles offer several profound lessons. First and foremost is the realization that health, both mental and physical, is the most valuable asset a person can have. No amount of money, fame, or power can replace it once it's gone. Perry's openness about his surgeries, the use of a colostomy bag, and the indignities that accompanied his health battles made it clear that vulnerability is a strength. He showed that admitting when we are not okay and seeking help are not signs of weakness, but rather the ultimate demonstrations of courage. Additionally, Perry's humor in the face of severe health challenges demonstrates the importance of maintaining a sense of levity, even when times are tough. Humor for Perry was more than just a tool for making people laugh. It was a means of survival. His ability to joke about his condition helped to humanize his struggles and made his story accessible, serving as a reminder that even in the darkest moments, a little light can make all the difference. Lesson 5. Legacy is helping others. Matthew Perry's ultimate legacy transcends his career in entertainment. It is defined by his commitment to helping others overcome the very challenges that nearly consumed him. After battling addiction for much of his life, Perry found purpose in turning his painful experiences into a source of hope and inspiration for others. His desire to use his platform to aid those struggling with addiction became more than just a goal. It was the legacy he wanted to leave behind. One of the most significant ways Perry made a difference was through the founding of Perry House, a sober living facility located in Los Angeles. Perry transformed his Malibu mansion into a rehabilitation center, a space dedicated to helping people in recovery. Perry House was not just a building. It was a manifestation of Perry's deep-seated belief that healing is possible when people are given the right support. Perry said, "The best thing about me isn't that I was on Friends, it's that I helped people get sober." For him, this endeavor was about more than providing a place to stay. It was about creating a safe environment where people could heal without judgment, a place that he wished he had during his most difficult times. Perry House was structured to provide a holistic approach to recovery. It wasn't just about getting sober, it was about learning how to live again. The facility offered a range of support services, including group therapy, individualized counseling, and workshops focused on rebuilding self-esteem and creating life skills that could help residents re-enter society with a sense of hope and purpose. Perry was personally involved in the day-to-day operations, often visiting and sharing his own experiences with the residents. His openness and honesty made him approachable and relatable. The people at Perry House didn't just see a celebrity, they saw someone who understood their struggles because he had lived through them. In addition to Perry House, Matthew Perry dedicated himself to raising awareness about addiction. He often spoke at conferences, schools, and community events, sharing his story in the hopes of breaking the stigma surrounding substance abuse. He understood the shame that came with addiction, having faced it himself for decades. By sharing his journey so openly, Perry made it clear that addiction wasn't something to be ashamed of. It was a health issue that needed treatment, compassion, and understanding. One of Perry's key messages was that addiction is not a moral failing, but a disease that can affect anyone, regardless of their background or success. Addiction doesn't care if you're a sitcom star or a regular person. It just wants to take everything from you, he once said during a speaking engagement. His candidness allowed others to see addiction for what it truly is, rather than as a weakness or a personal shortcoming. Perry's advocacy reached even the halls of Congress. He took part in congressional hearings, sharing his experiences to push for changes in how addiction is treated in the United States. During one of these hearings, Perry spoke passionately about the need for more supportive treatment options rather than punitive measures that often leave addicts feeling more hopeless. He advocated for programs that offered holistic care, addressing not just the physical aspects of addiction, but the underlying psychological and emotional issues as well. We need to treat people, not punish them, he emphasized. His involvement in these hearings wasn't just about sharing his story. It was about influencing policy, using his fame and personal experience to try and make systemic changes that would benefit others. Another aspect of Perry's legacy was the personal connections he made with people struggling with addiction. Perry frequently spoke about meeting fans who were going through similar battles, and he often took the time to talk to them, offering words of encouragement and support. He would even give out his phone number to those who seemed particularly in need of someone to talk to. Perry recounted several instances where these conversations led to real change in people's lives. One fan who had approached him after an event later contacted Perry to say that their conversation had inspired them to seek help and that they had been sober for over a year. "If my story can help even one person, then it's worth it," Perry often said. These moments of direct human connection were among the most meaningful to Perry. They represented the real impact he could have beyond the screen. Perry also worked closely with addiction awareness organizations to spread his message further. He partnered with the National Association of Drug Court Professionals, NADCP, an organization focused on providing alternative, non-punitive solutions for people struggling with addiction. Through his work with the NADCP, Perry supported the concept of drug courts, which offer offenders an opportunity to receive treatment instead of serving jail time. He was an outspoken advocate for these programs, emphasizing that recovery is more effective when it is supportive rather than punitive. Drug courts give people a second chance, a chance I wish more people had, Perry said in an interview. His advocacy highlighted the importance of giving people the opportunity to rebuild their lives rather than simply punishing them for their illness. Perry's decision to write his memoir, Friends, Lovers, and the Big, Terrible Thing, was also a crucial part of his legacy. The book wasn't just a recount of his career and experiences. It was a deeply personal account of his battles with addiction, the highs and lows, and the lessons he learned along the way. Perry was incredibly honest in his writing, describing the raw and often painful details of his addiction. He spoke about his relapses, the darkest moments of his life, and the times he nearly lost everything. But he also wrote about the moments of hope, when he saw a way forward and when he was able to help others do the same. I wanted to leave behind something real, something that would help others see that they're not alone in this struggle, Perry said about the motivation behind his book. The memoir became a beacon for those who were battling similar demons, a testament to the fact that, while the journey was difficult, recovery was possible. In his personal life, Perry extended his support to friends and colleagues who were struggling with addiction. Hollywood is a place where substance abuse is not uncommon, and Perry often found himself in the position of helping those around him. He described instances where he would receive late-night phone calls from fellow actors or industry friends who were in crisis, and he never hesitated to provide whatever help he could. This support wasn't always easy. Perry admitted that seeing others go through the same struggles sometimes brought up his own fears and vulnerabilities, but he also saw it as an opportunity to be there for others in a way that he often felt no one had been there for him. Being able to help my friends, to be the person they could rely on, was part of my own healing, Perry once shared. It was this willingness to be vulnerable, to openly share his experiences, that made Perry's support so genuine and impactful. Perry's legacy is deeply tied to his ability to turn personal pain into a force for positive change. He took the darkest moments of his life, times when he felt broken, lost, and hopeless, and used them to shine a light for others who were navigating similar darkness. His honesty about his struggles made him a role model, not because he was perfect, but because he wasn't. He showed that being open about one's weaknesses and using those weaknesses to help others was the ultimate strength. For viewers and fans, Perry's journey was more than a story of addiction and recovery. It was a story of resilience, compassion, and the power of turning personal adversity into a legacy that would help others long after his career on screen had ended. Matthew Perry may have been known to millions as Chandler Bing, but he was far more than just a beloved sitcom character. His legacy lies in the lives he touched, the people he helped, and the message he left behind. He demonstrated that no matter how many times you fall, the act of getting back up can inspire countless others. By founding Perry House, advocating for better treatment options, sharing his story, and supporting others in their recovery, Matthew Perry made his life about more than his own battles. He made it about making sure others had the tools, support, and hope to fight their battles as well.